Hey everyone, it's Tom Seymour with VHS Massacre Radio. Just giving you an update. I know it's been a heck of a long time since I've done anything and given you any updates, but I definitely needed to take a break from things. I think what I was finding was that, I do these occasional podcasts, and believe it or not, they would take up some time and creative energy. And at some point, maintaining my whole social media presence, which isn't huge. I'd say web-wide, it's about 20,000 followers across all formats. I was beginning to think that it had no purpose. VHS Massacre 2, my latest doc, had been out on Blu-ray for many months and was doing well. And, recently I just felt I had really nothing to add to the dialogue or the landscape of independent filmmaking. I mean, I did notice, Netflix, their subscriber base is losing ground, as well as Disney Plus, and people are talking about a recession. None of that stuff is ever particularly good for independent filmmakers, although you might think like, oh, well, maybe that'll open the door for smaller filmmakers to come in. Maybe Netflix will want to save some dough and buy, a couple thousand independent films, but I'm not sure they really care about that. I mean, they're really trying to compete with the other biggest people in the industry, the media conglomerates, and none of them are really interested in small potatoes. I mean, Prime will take some low budget stuff, and maybe Tubi and things like that. And then Google with YouTube just has, everything for free on there, and with only the largest subscribers, the largest YouTube content creators making money, really. So it is sort of locked down. But that being said, recently I've been working on a project. It's called The Exorcism of Fleete Marish. I believe it's finished. I'm going to send it to a few of my fellow filmmakers for like a final review and see what they say, but it's based upon the footage from the Rudyard Kipling Mark of the Beast. But if this is both a audio podcast and a visual podcast, but so the original film, it was very grainy, somewhat deliberately. And what I did recently was I re-edited the film. I put a brand new beginning on it, a brand new ending. There's additional footage, additional exteriors and aerial shots, minor pieces of footage that were not in the original cut are added back in. Basically, it's a full overhaul of the film. Brand new score by Tim Kulig, and it's a fantastic score. I changed the aspect ratio from a 16:9 to a 2:1 aspect ratio. In DaVinci Resolve, I spent a lot of time turning into a black and white version to emulate Tri-X film. There was a lot I liked in Premiere Pro called Tri-X, and but a lot of people are say to do your color correction in DaVinci Resolve. So that's what I did, and so what I basically did was I looked at that lot and how it came out, and then basically when I brought the film into DaVinci Resolve, I degrained everything and I emulated that LUT by manually, created that black and white version. And for those who are watching the YouTube version, you can see it's degrained. The footage is very clean. Whereas before it was pretty grainy. So basically, it's an entire new film. I think this one's way more entertaining. The narration was pulled out, and a lot of the dialogue that I think didn't serve the story is pulled out. So I think this plays as a more serious and authentic horror story. And so, in talking about distribution, the question was, okay, well, what am I going to do with this thing? And that is the question. I think I may try to put it out through MVD. That would have some video on demand elements, and they would try to push it through the other various formats, Prime and things like that. But it really is hard to say. One idea is to use something like MakeFlix and try to put out some Blu-ray versions that have both the Exorcism of Fleete Marish and the original Rudyard Kipling's Mark of the Beast on it. Have both versions with maybe some new commentary and some new doc material. Maybe autograph them, maybe do limited runs, maybe do some VHSs. I don't know. So the goal with this is to try to think outside of the box and maybe come up with something that could be satisfying for me to do. This whole process, I think it took about 6 months for me to redo the entire film. I actually had to pull... The original movie came out in 2012, which means the film came out in about 2011. And so I was pulling from an XML I made from Final Cut Pro 7, and it actually opened up in the latest Premiere Pro, but it basically had a rough timeline. So basically, it's an entirely new audio, new foleying, new audio mix, new score, brand new noise reduction and vocal enhancement, and even de-reverbing certain scenes. So this should be a much more enjoyable experience than the initial one that had come out. And as always, it still has Lee Radzowan's award-winning creature effects of the Beast, played by the brilliant Mark Bovino. And basically you can see, the level of quality and the creature design is great. And so it's anyway, I think it's a very cool version of the film. It's something new. It's something that I could do under the time constraints of just working full time and being a dad and all that stuff. So anyway, I'm pretty proud of it. I hope you will enjoy it when it comes out. It will probably be like another 6 months before it's out somewhere. I really have to. There's a lot of press materials I have to make, and I'm going to be working with Matt Ford. He's going to maybe hook me up on doing some artwork for it and whatnot. So I think it's an interesting concept, basically making a new film out of an old film, and but I think it's pretty enjoyable. Pacing's totally different. Like I said, performance. There are even some cases where I take different takes of actors and actresses' performances. So I think it's going to be really cool. Some cool things that have happened beyond that. Last month I got to do an interview with Fanscene, basically this awesome podcast. And it was a lot of fun. We talked about VHS Massacre 2, and I was asked if I would ever do a part 3. And I'm thinking maybe like a few years down the road, maybe I could think of picking that back up. But I kind of actually got exhausted by Doc and exhausted by trying to crank out YouTube content and just really not seeing results. And then also being cynical too, like, because I would get results on TikTok and Instagram, put out a video, maybe get like a 1,000, 1,000 or 2 views across all formats, but really just not understanding or not really caring about what that means. TikTok I think is highly questionable in regard to if people are actually watching it. Twitter impressions are also very questionable. I'll post something, I'll get 40,000 Twitter impressions. I'm like, okay. I mean, maybe like a tenth of that, is actual humans that have seen and engaged with the video content, because I think they count literally when someone scrubs by something, so it's definitely interesting. But so basically I've been trying to hold off from doing some of the social media stuff, and if I buy a new game, I've been really into the Evercade handheld gaming system. It's a new system that you buy these $20 cartridges, which are volumes of games. So I just bought the Jericho collection. It's a lot of SNES and NES games, and they also have a Versus system, which is a more of like a home console, and the same cartridges work on that. So I've actually been really delighted. I'm impressed by how much fun I'm having playing the Evercade. So beyond that, not much is going on. The sort of podcast is on life support, you could say. I'm gonna do updates when I can, but it's not really my priority anymore, and I think to some degree I kind of had to shut down for a while and refill my creative tank. A lot of the time was dedicated to this, the Exorcism of Fleete Marish, and I'm going to be working on that a lot more. I will definitely chime in when there's new information and things like that. And that's about it. We may even look into film festivals for this. There are some festivals that play movies that are older, or and I'm curious to know if this constitutes being a new film. Like, maybe we can just enter it as a new film, so there's a lot of potential there, physical media or digital releases, all that stuff. So we'll see what happens. That's about it. I was talking to the guys at Troma, and there's talks of a digital release for VHS Massacre 2, my documentary about that's about the American exploitation film, and how the media conglomerates have kind of stomped out some of the independent film scene, at least financially. So it hit the #1 Blu-ray on Amazon back in January. It was a #1 new release, and then it was the #2 bestseller. And so that was a really great sign. I know that they're talking about eventually doing the digital release. Obviously, it'll start on Troma Now. Troma Now is a really cool streaming service that I enjoy. And but they're talking about other things like Prime and Tubi and possibly Mubi. They played the first film I did. Other things like that. So you never know what could happen there. And in regard to some of the stuff I've been watching, I don't tend to want to talk too much about mainstream content, I guess what I could talk about is the Multiverse of Madness. I was happy that Sam Raimi directed that, and I think of the Marvel films, it actually has a very distinct style and a brilliant execution that makes it stand apart from other Marvel films. And when you see a real auteur, a real pro doing a film like that, makes you remember what films used to be like. And I think a lot of people are depressed about this Netflix and Disney Plus, them creating quote-unquote content. And it's services like that make you forget about the value of film, and they make you forget about the worth of film because it's all a malaise. But when you see people like Sam Raimi create such distinctive films, then that really gives you some hope. Another great one was The Northman. If you haven't seen that in the theater, that's a fantastic film. Very clear vision. I think it was the director, Eggers. I think he did that one. So there's some still mainstream auteurs out there. They just, you don't hear from them all the time. You don't see their work all the time, but they're still there. This guy Jim Hoskins, he directed The Greasy Strangler, which I think is freaking hilarious. It's a total, hilarious comedy. He did An Evening with Beverly Loughlin too, which had this crazy all-star cast, which was interesting as well. But I was kind of wondering what happened to I was wondering what he was working on next. And I basically reached out to some of the cast, Guy Elobar, and I think it was Michael St. Michael's. And I was going to try to interview them, and it didn't really happen. My angle was like this exploitation angle, and they really didn't think of the films that way, so I didn't want to push it, and they declined anyway. But then I was realizing they did this show for Adult Swim called Tropical Cocktails, and I'm only a few episodes in, but it's so ridiculous, and it's just got their unique flair, So anyway, it's free on Adult Swim. You could find it, Tropical Cocktails. I think it's only one season. I think they stopped doing them in like 2019, and I was hoping maybe they would do another season, but I'm not sure what's up with that. But anyway, y'all, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.